In the UK, as I've discussed in many previous videos, we have a deadline for the ban of the sale of new petrol and diesel cars, which was originally 2030. It was moved to 2035 by Rishi Sunak, and which the Labour government pledged to move back to 2030 in their manifesto. They haven't actually announced that yet, but I think it's taken as read that they are going to do that. But anyway, whether it's 2030 or 2035, the question is, will it actually happen? Do you think it will happen? Well, apparently over half of British motorists don't think it will happen. And in a new survey conducted by Sustain, many have actually said it's time to think beyond just electric vehicles. Are they right? Well, I'll tell you more right after this.
A brown car guy.
Now, regardless of the 2030 or the 2035 deadline, as I've said before, there's also something called the ZEV mandate. And well, actually, its real name is Vehicle Emissions Trading Schemes, VETS, VETS. It's basically in that it's stipulated that an increasing percentage of cars sold by manufacturers each year should be electric or they get fined. Now, at the moment for 2024, it's 22%. Which it may not sound like much, but actually it doesn't even look like it's going to be achieved this year. In fact, I think we're currently expected to hit a total of EV sales in the UK for 2024 at 18.5%. That is according to the SMMT, the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, and they should know. I mean, it's supposed to get to 80% by 2030, and the remaining 20% is an allowance for hybrid vehicles, probably plug-in hybrids, until 2035 when the mandate hits 100%. This is regardless of the 2030 or 2035 deadline. But what do drivers think? In a survey of over 2,000 Brits, 59% of petrol and diesel owners say they'll keep their cars running for as long as possible. In fact, 1 in 4 plan to buy another ICE internal combustion engine car just before the ban kicks in. That's 27% of Brits planning to buy an ICE car close to the deadline so that it keeps them going for at least another decade. Why? Because many feel that scrapping a perfectly working car has a bigger environmental impact than keeping it on the road. And I've often said that this is true. The most environmentally friendly car is the one that is run right to the end of its life to get the maximum use out of the resources that go into it. And some people simply don't believe that EVs will suit their needs. Nonetheless, people do say that they want a cleaner, greener motoring strategy. In fact, 54% of those surveyed want to hear more about alternatives, options that go beyond just electric vehicles. Things like sustainable fuel. However, awareness on sustainable fuel is actually quite low, with over a third of those people saying they've never even heard of sustainable fuels. So there's also a concern about how the government measures environmental impact. 45% of those, again in the survey, say that the current policy is flawed because it doesn't consider the full life cycle of green alternatives. So this is the perception, this is what people think. So they are saying that, for example, with EVs, everybody focuses on the tailpipe emissions, but they don't talk about the carbon emissions of the production of the car, the battery of the car, the distribution, the delivery, and of course then the electricity generation that goes into actually running, charging and then running that car. Although to be fair, all coal stations are now closed in the UK, and right now looking at the live display, only 33.7% of energy is from fossil fuels. That is gas, and 38% is from renewables, mostly from wind power actually. 18.8% is also coming from nuclear and biomass. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Are you enjoying the video? Well, make sure you've punched the like button. It helps. Now, David Richardson from Sustain explains whether we meet the deadline on new cars and van sales or not, one thing is certain. We're going to have ICE vehicles on our roads for years to come. What we need is a strategy that addresses this. It's important to stress that ICE vehicles are not the issue here. It's the fossil fuel that we put in them. So if credible alternatives are already publicly available that could make our current cars more environmentally friendly, shouldn't we embrace them? So this is what he's saying. And are sustainable fuels really a thing? I mean, are they real? Well, he goes on. Sustainable fuels are readily available, compatible with our current fleet, and they could help reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by more than 80% compared to, well, traditional fossil fuels. Plus, as our survey shows, the public appetite for them is evident, with 54% already stating that they would happily use it within their vehicle. If we keep sidelining such innovations rather than investing in them and incentivizing their use, we'll continue to move our milestones rather than meet them. So this is what he said. Anyway, who is Sustain? Well, created by bespoke fuel specialist Corriton, Sustain uses advanced second-generation biofuel manufactured from agricultural waste, such as straw or byproducts or waste from crops, which wouldn't be used for actual consumption. So in doing so, the fuel utilizes the carbon that already exists in our atmosphere, which the plants absorb as they grow. So essentially it's recycling that carbon rather than releasing the additional CO2 that is currently locked underground in traditional fossil fuel, the way that we normally do it. So it's basically taking the carbon from the air in the plants and then using that instead of digging it out of the ground, basically is what I'm saying. This year, Sustain's biofuel blends have been used to set world powerboating speed records, achieve sustainable driving first, and support the environmental efforts of events such as Carfest, the Goodwood Revival, and of course the British Motor Show as well, where I've actually seen them in action. Now, I know that many out there will immediately comment that this is completely impractical because e-fuels, biofuels, carbon extracted or carbon reclaimed fuels, whatever you want to call them, and all the diversity of these alternative fuels, all of these alternative options are produced in too small quantities and are very expensive and very energy intensive to produce. And you're not wrong. I mean, that is all probably true. But, you know, economies of scale and all that, right? Everything at first is expensive to produce and make, and time intensive and energy intensive. But over time, as demand for these things grow and development proceeds, quantities go up and costs come down. I mean, that's just the nature of these things, right? In any case, even if it is, the way things are at the moment, every little thing that we can do helps, right? So if we can make use of these things, surely that's not a bad thing. You know, whatever might help might make a difference. And we know that ICE vehicles, or clearly from surveys like this and from anecdotal evidence, ICE vehicles will continue to be in use for at least another 20 years, if not more. So surely it's worth exploring every option to make them as clean as possible, right? The road to sustainability doesn't need to be a single lane. As we look towards 2035, let's embrace every solution available, from EVs to biofuels and anything else. I mean, dilithium crystals, if you like. I don't care. I'd love to see those, actually. Anyway, would be great to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below, and I'll catch you on the next video. Shout out time, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoy my content, why not get involved? Buy me a coffee. You can do that at either of these links. Or if you're watching on YouTube, buy me a thanks or take out a membership. It all helps. It really does.